and welcome back to TVB News. In the US presidential race, frontrunners Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton swept to resounding victories in the New York State primary. Trump bounced back from a difficult stretch in his Republican campaign, while Clinton is pushing closer to locking up the Democratic nomination. Alan Buckner reports.
Donald Trump's win marked a rebound from his Wisconsin defeat 2 weeks ago, as he garnered more than 50% of the New York vote.
We don't have much of a race anymore, based on what I'm seeing on television. Senator Cruz is just about mathematically eliminated. And we've won another state. As you know, we have won millions of more votes than Senator Cruz, millions and millions of more votes than Governor Kasich.
But Trump still faces an uphill battle to get enough delegates to ensure that there's not a contested Republican convention. Meanwhile, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who's running second behind Trump, was already in Pennsylvania, where there's a primary next week.
This is the year of the outsider. I'm an outsider. Bernie Sanders is an outsider. Both with the same diagnosis, but both with very different paths to healing. Ronald Reagan and Jack Kennedy were outsiders.
Ohio Governor John Kasich finished second behind Trump in the New York primary, but still runs a distant third for the Republican nomination. He's counting on a contested Republican convention.
Nobody's going to get enough delegates. I mean, the Trump organization is complaining all the time about all this and that. And you know why? Because they know they're not going to get enough votes to win it on the first ballot.
On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton won handily in the New York primary. She served as a U.S. Senator from the state for 8 years. The approximately 16 percentage point win over rival Bernie Sanders strengthened her claim to the nomination.
Today, you proved once again there's no place like home. We've won in every region of the country, but this one's personal.
Despite overwhelming odds, Bernie Sanders vowed to fight on.
Next Tuesday, here in Pennsylvania, there will be an enormously important Democratic primary. What I have learned so far from this campaign is when voter turnout is high, we win.
Next week will feature primaries in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, and Maryland. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Staying in the United States now, and a former New York City police officer who shot and killed an unarmed black man in an unlit stairwell 2 years ago has been spared prison time. A judge reduced his manslaughter conviction to a lesser charge and sentenced him to 5 years probation and 800 hours of community service. The court decision prompted demonstrations outside a Brooklyn courthouse. Former New York City police officer Peter Liang could have been jailed for up to 15 years after he was found guilty of manslaughter earlier this year for shooting to death an unarmed black man in 2014 while on duty.
On the count of criminally negligent homicide, sentence to the court is 5 years probation plus 800 hours of community service. There's no evidence, either direct or circumstantial, that the defendant was aware of Kai Gurley's presence and still disregarded any risk by firing the weapon.
After being spared jail, Liang told the court he never meant to fire and apologized to Gurley's family.
The matter of November 20, 2014 was devastating. A shot from my gun caused the death of another person. I was in shock. I could barely breathe. The shot was accidental, but someone was dead. I apologize to this public and to a family friend. I wish I could undo what happened.
Some of Gurley's supporters in the courtroom began sobbing, while others demonstrated against the ruling. The shooting fueled nationwide protests over law enforcement's use of excessive force on minorities. But the case differed from many other high-profile incidents that helped intensify the Black Lives Matter movement. Liang, who is Chinese-American, was not accused of deliberately killing Gurley.
Russia and Ukraine have reached agreement for the release of a jailed Ukrainian pilot. Jameson Wong has more.
The face of an anguished mother. I'm happy to hear your voice, but please stop your hunger strike, Maria Shevchenko told her daughter over the phone. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko made a similar appeal while telling Nadezhda Shevchenko that he's proud of her bravery and patriotism. The 34-year-old pilot was captured by Russia-backed rebels in eastern Ukraine in 2014. Accused of directing mortar fire that killed 2 Russian journalists, she was sentenced to 22 years imprisonment last month. Shevchenko has denied any wrongdoing. After discussing the case with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, Poroshenko announced yesterday Moscow and Kiev have reached an agreement to free her. The Ukrainian pilot could be swapped for 2 Russian servicemen who were captured in eastern Ukraine and sentenced earlier this week to 14 years in prison each. Poroshenko did not say when he expected Shevchenko to be returned. He did tell Putin that he's ready to send a presidential jet to Russia to take her home. Russia's foreign minister, however, couldn't help taking a dig at the U.S. and other Western countries. Sergei Lavrov expressed frustration over persistent demands for Shevchenko's release. They only talked about her as far as the issue of human rights in Russia is concerned. But no one remembers that the Russian journalists were killed in Ukraine, Lavrov said. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
Cuban President Raul Castro will serve a second term as the head of the country's Communist Party. Making a rare public appearance at the closing of the Communist Party Congress, retired Cuban leader, 89-year-old Fidel Castro, called on the party to continue to fight for his communist ideals. His brother and current president, 84-year-old Raul Castro, said he'll remain the party's first secretary for a second 5-year term. That means he could hold on to the powerful position even after he is presumably replaced by a younger president in 2018. All right, Tony, sports.
Yep, more NBA playoffs to talk about. The NBA, San Antonio Spurs and the Atlanta Hawks took command of their playoff series. The Spurs routed the Memphis Grizzlies, while the Hawks faced a cold-shooting Boston team. Here's James Wong.
Atlanta's